Addiction is not a choice. Hello, my name is Sammy, and in the last 5 years, I have been quitting 5 different addictions, and now I help people to do the same with alcohol. So, today I want to talk about why addiction is not a choice. And this is really important to understand because it helps you to understand the real nature of addiction and it identifies what are really the problems in the realm of addiction. Even the Einstein said that if he would have an hour to solve a problem, he would use 55 minutes to think about the problem and 5 minutes to think about a solution. When you really identify the problem, then it's not that hard to solve. And I want to clarify that when I talk about choices, I don't mean choices in general, but I mean the choices in the realm of addiction. So let's walk you through to this process. So first, choice equals reaction. We mostly, what we call choices, they are not really conscious choices, but they are mostly reactions. And reaction is an interesting word because it means it has two words, reaction, which means repeated action. And when we repeat our actions, we will going to find ourselves from the same places and from the same destinations. So if we want to have new destinations or new outcomes in our lives, we have to change our reactions. And there comes something before we make our choices. And there is some influences that forms our choices. And I will walk you through these different influences. And when you understand these influences, you can change your influences and you can make different choices in your future. So first influence is state of being. Think about the moments when you usually drink. Do you drink when you are full of joy and full of happiness and excitement? And I can guess that most of the time you don't drink on those times. But you drink when you feel anxiety, when you are stressed, or when you are depressed. Those are the most common states that leads to drinking or other kind of addictions. So we can conclude that when we drink, we operate from the state fight or flight. And this is very key component of addiction, fight or flight. If you can just understand or become really good at becoming out of this state, you can overcome any addiction, I can guarantee. And what is interesting about the state of fight or flight is that in that realm, our language is not really logic or reason. But when we operate from the state of fight or flight, our language is pain and pleasure. We just try to reduce our pain by getting pleasure. And the most fundamental principle of human nature is that we will always try to avoid pain. And it's something that you can't even decide to do because it's coded your nervous system. We will always try to avoid pain. And it's the most fundamental principle that drives human behavior. So now I want to ask a question. Is addiction a choice if we operate from the state of flight or fight? And the most fundamental principle that drives human behavior is to avoid pain. Then, is addiction really a choice? And I can say that it's not a choice, but it's reaction. It's addiction is a reaction of our survival mechanism. And this is really, really important to understand when you start to overcome addiction. If you can just learn to if you can just understand why you operate from the state of flight or flight, then you can overcome addiction and make really huge progress in your journey. So that's the first factor of what influences our choices. It's our state of being, and in the realm of addiction, especially, it's the state of fight or flight. So the second factor is our mental models. So what I mean about mental models, I mean about our perception of the world or our life or our situation or even addiction. And our perception is formed by thinking. And this is really crucial part of this process. Our perception is our playground, and the choices exist in these playgrounds. And if we can't make a decision to quit alcohol, it can comes down to our mental models. We are not really operating from the playgrounds where those choices exist, because how we think about addiction or whatever thing forms our mental models. And when we have the right mental models, we can do the right choices. So this is really huge part about this process. It's about learning to change how we think about things. What is the difference between people who fear airplanes and people who do not fear airplanes? Are airplanes different for people? And I can say that that they are not different, but what what makes people fear airplanes is how they think about those airplanes. So we can say that fear, for example, fear of quitting alcohol, is only the question about perception. It exists only in our minds. And another example is that you can have three scenarios. Let's say that there is a person who thinks that addiction is a disease. Then let's say that there is a person who says that addiction is just a normal setback of life. And then the last scenario is that, let's say that there is a person who thinks that addiction is an opportunity to growth. So think about how different choices those people will make in those situations. So if the person thinks that addiction is a disease, his actions will be based on survival, because that's what diseases makes us to feel and act. And in the second situation, if the person thinks that the addiction is just a normal setback, then his actions will be based on to overcome this problem. Because if it's a normal setback, then we normally just overcome those setbacks. And in the last scenario, if the person thinks that addiction is opportunity to growth, he will be very excited to take action, and he will feel very differently when he take action, and his actions will be very different, and he will take very quality action. So it comes down to your perception. Your perception or your mental models are everything, because how you think about the addiction creates your feelings about addiction, and when you have good feelings about your situation, you will act differently. So you can make so big changes in your life when you just change how you think about certain things. And mental models, state of being, these states influence each other, and this all influence each other. When you change one thing, it starts to affect everything, and it's like a domino effect. So next factor that influences our choices is our unconsciousness. So are you unconscious when you do decisions, or are you conscious? So this is about your awareness. People talk about topics like free will, but I can say that your free will is directly linked to your level of awareness. If you are unconscious when you do decisions or choices, then you don't really have a free will. And this is really key component of addiction. It's the unconscious, because this unconscious nature is one of the main drivers of addiction, and it even makes addiction possible. Because if we will be really conscious, we will be addicted to anything, I can guarantee. And addiction is a really virus of unconsciousness. Even the drinking, taking drugs is just the extension of our unconsciousness. When we are sleeping, when we have a lot of pain unresolved from us in our unconsciousness, then it will manifest as drinking or taking drugs, or gambling, whatever the form of addiction is. But this is very essential to understand that if we want to overcome addiction, we have to start to break this unconsciousness. And when we kill the things that drives those addictive behaviors, the addiction will die. And that's why you don't have to ask what, you have to ask why. You have to understand why you did the decision. When you understand the why, you can make different choices in your future. So that's the third factor that influences our choices. So the last factor is knowledge. The reason why our knowledge influences our choices is that our knowledge forms our beliefs, and we take action what we believe to be true. So in that sense, we so in that sense our beliefs creates our reality. If you don't believe that you can't quit alcohol or addiction, or if you don't believe that you can have an amazing relationship or amazing life, then you don't going to take action towards those things. So this is like a very fundamental of every change, that we have to understand our current beliefs and then change those beliefs. So very simple thing that you can do is just start to consume new information. Listen to people who have life that you want to live, and when you start to listen to those people and do same things, then naturally you will have the life that those people have. So start to listen to people who have sobriety or live amazing life after the addiction. And yes, basically these four things, forms your choices, and these affect each other. When you change one thing, it starts to change everything. When you when you change your mental models, when you start to think differently, it raises your state of being. When you raise your state of being, you start to automatically think better. And when you raise your awareness and you become more conscious, you will attract better thoughts, and you start to feel better, and you start to have better beliefs when you start to attract better thoughts. And when you have and when you upgrade your knowledge, you will become more conscious. because when you start to know more about addiction or start to know more about yourself, it breaks the unconsciousness. So we can conclude about this video that addiction is not a choice, but it's a reaction. And when you understand what makes the reaction and start to change those things, you can make different choices in your future. So now you have the theory about how choices are formed. Now you just have to build systems how you change your state, or if the fight or flight is your problem, you have to understand the reason what makes you live in the fight or flight, and then just start to build better systems to cope with the stress. Meditate, do breath work, exercise, watch a great movie, whatever changes your state, do those things. But it's really important that it fits that it fits to your lifestyle. And even drinking alcohol or addiction, it's all about changing your state. If you can remove the need for changing this state or create other ways to change your state, then you're not going to have desire to drink. And then create different mental models. So this is just about starting to read and listen to inspirational people and start to do it daily basis. When you start to do it every day, it starts to automatically change your thinking. And when you change your thinking, it changes your perception, which is your mental model. And the better choices exist in those mental models. And then we have unconsciousness. So this is about learning to be more present, meditating, journaling, reading. Those things breaks this unconsciousness. You can learn more about addiction, then you become more conscious about the problem that you have. And when you learn to know yourself more deeper and profound way, you break down unconsciousness in yourself. And you can do this by meditating, journaling, or reading. And then system for knowledge, just start to read and listen to people that have the life that you want to live. And that's basically the message of this video. Just understand these 4 factors that influence your choices and then build systems that solve these 4 problems. So addiction is not a choice, but it's a reaction. Change your reactions and you change your choices, and which means that you will overcome your addiction. So thank you for watching this video, and bye bye.